Welcome to Bloor Central, friends. My name is Doug Hammond. This is Wednesday, June 25th. We don't do many of these recordings anymore, not since COVID's been over, but last Sunday we had a really good time here together at Bloor Central. And not only, well, the crowd, I guess, was kind of small, but the response to the Bible teaching was massive. We really had a great time, particularly at the end of the service or at the end of the lesson, just sharing a little bit about it. And I thought it was a good idea at the end of our time together. I thought it might be a good idea to just record some of this Bible lesson because I think it's going to be something we'll be coming back to from time to time quite regularly. When I was preparing last week, I was telling people, hey, what does God look like? I'm going to tell you on Sunday what God looks like. Now, that might sound a bit unusual. In John 1:18, it says that nobody has seen God. However, the scripture does give us an awful lot of insight into what God looks like. Not visual images, but we can recognize him. In Colossians 2:9, it tells us that the ultimate revelation of God is going to be found in Jesus. His life and teaching really is all we need to know about God. And many times in Jesus' teaching, it was done through parables. So a parable is like a story that helps you understand something about something that you don't know. So it takes something you're familiar with and helps you to understand it a bit better. So there's this parable in Luke 15. I'm going to read it for you in a moment. But before I do, I want to make a suggestion to you that, before we get into this, you need to have a copy of Luke 15 in front of you, whether you have a Bible or you look it up on your computer or something. Or on your phone. I want to encourage you to have the passage in front of you as we're going through this lesson. It's really important for you to engage with the scripture as we're going through the teaching. Secondly, I encourage you to have paper and pen handy. There's going to be some things that you want to write down so that you can reflect on it later on. You're going to get much more from the lesson if you have those simple things with you. A copy of Luke 15, 11 through 31, and then a paper and pen. So if you need to go get that, I'd encourage you to put this on pause right now. But I am going to read for you from Luke chapter 15. It's a New International Version, and I'm going to start at verse 11. It says this: Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he'd spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead, and he is alive again. He was lost, and he is found." So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing, so he called to one of the servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. His father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate, to be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So, like all parables, there are things here that we read about that represent something. And I said to you that it's important for us to know what does God look like? Now, I've said this many times over the past number of years, the importance of maybe drawing a picture of God, having an image of who God is. And some people have wondered why I would want to do that. Well, for one thing, we really want to focus on seeking God. And, in seeking God, you need to know who you're looking for. The Bible does say that Satan can come disguised as an angel of light. Unless we really understand who God is, how do we know that we found him? How do we know what we're looking? In order to seek for someone, you need to know what they look like. The other thing is that many times, as we begin to worship God, we tend to start imitating the God we worship. If this is a God that is aggressive and violent, it rubs off on us. If this is a God that we picture as being passive, then we become passive. If this is a God that excludes people, then we begin to exclude others. It goes on and on. So it's important that we understand what does God look, who is this God that we seek to worship? The last thing is, and I'm hoping I can demonstrate that through the lesson today, is that, how you see God directly affects how you see the world, even how you see yourself. So it's important to understand, who are we looking for here? Again, this parable gives us a pretty good image of what we're looking for, who the true God is. In this parable, the father represents God, and the two sons, they represent us. They represent humanity. And so in this story, there's something very painful that happens to God. His son says, hey, Dad, I want to take the money that you have that you're going to give me when you die. I want to take it now and spend it. I don't want to wait for it. Please give it to me now. Now, this is something, really unheard of. This is really an insult. It's disgraceful, really. It embarrasses the father. It breaks his heart to think that his son literally is saying, Dad, I wish you were dead. But there's something important to recognize here, and I've got 11 things that I need to speak to you about this. And the first thing I want you to understand about God is that God offers us freedom. That's so that we can enjoy authentic friendship. God didn't make us like a robot. He didn't make us so that we can't think for ourselves. He gives us freedom to follow our own will. That's the only way in which he can really, create someone who's going to love him. And so in this image that is given to us of a son coming, probably, if our own children came, we'd say, hey, sorry, you'd sit there and wait. This is my money. I'll decide what I want to do with it. We'd probably rebuke the son. But we see an image here of a God who is willing to offer us freedom even when it hurts. We clearly see that this father was brokenhearted by the request from his son. But even though he's in pain, he is a God that offers us freedom. Please, as we deal with our image of God, you need to understand this God we seek is not a dictator. He's not a harsh ruler. He gives us our free will, and he will not take it back, even when we hurt him. So the next few items that I have, the first one is that this God offers you freedom. The second image that I want to use to describe God, well, the next few come from verse 20, and I would encourage you to have verse 20 right there in front of you so you can refer to it. This is a verse absolutely packed with meaning and all kinds of different levels of meaning as well. So it says early on there that the son came to his senses, the blessing of rock bottom. He hits rock bottom, And suddenly he realizes, wait a minute, I've made a terrible mistake. But he's also assumed that his father's not going to take him back. He's humiliated him. He's broken his heart. So the son assumes, okay, I can't go back as a son, but maybe he'll hire me. And so the son goes back. He's got a speech planned when he meets his father. He's going to go back and he's going to say, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So in verse 20 we read, he's rehearsed his speech in verse 18 and 19. And then in verse 20, he get up and he's on his way to his father. When he gets to his father, he actually starts his little speech. And he said, that's in verse 21. But even before he gives his speech, in verse 20, and this is the one that we're going to spend a few minutes on here, we're given a real clear image of the father. Remember, this is the father whose heart has been broken. And yet, it says there in verse 20, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. In actual fact, I understand, I've read some commentaries on this, and they're saying that the context of this indicates that the father was looking. He was longing for the return of his son. This tells us something of God's eyes. God's eyes are looking for you to return. Even if you've broken his heart, even if you've turned against him, even if you've made mistakes. This is an incredible image of God. This is not a God who holds a grudge. And we are given this image of, I can think of times when I've been worried about my kids and I don't know where they are. And then when I see them, I'm just so overjoyed. And I think about that in this passage here. And this is the next thing that I want to say. In verse 20, we understand God has eyes. This God looks for your return. He's longing. He sees you a long way off. He's longing for you to come back to him. The second thing in that verse, it says, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. Compassion is an expression of love. Compassion is a characteristic of love. And so here what we're finding is that God, he's looking for us with love in his heart. It says compassion is actually defined as it's a concern for the suffering. It's an expression of love. He loves you so much and he's concerned about you when you're suffering. And so it says here in verse 20 that he saw his son-in-law filled with compassion. So he's not looking to rebuke or to stand off from the son. He's anxious to go to him. And it says that motivation comes from this compassion that was in his heart. And it says it filled his heart. There was no room for anything else. There was no anger. There was no rebuke. There was no, stubbornness. His heart is completely filled with love, expressed with compassion. I love this image. When you're drawing a picture of God, you got to somehow acknowledge his heart. His heart is filled with compassion. So we deal with, first of all, he's a God that gives us freedom, won't take it back. When we move away from him, he longs for us. He watches for our return. When he sees us, his heart is absolutely full. There's nothing else in his heart except compassion. The next thing we notice, number 4, God has legs. It says here that the father ran to his son. He wasn't standing off. He wasn't forcing the son to come all the way. He wasn't sort of crossing his eyes and just waiting, stubbornly waiting, for him to come back and apologize. He ran to him. This is such a beautiful expression of, running, because in the ancient world, men didn't run. Old men didn't run. That was something that was really undignified. Nobody would have done that. And yet here's someone his heart is so filled with compassion that he doesn't care. He doesn't care that his son has broken his heart. He doesn't care that he's made lots of mistakes. He doesn't care that he insulted him. He's running to him. And this is such an important image of God as well. He's not looking to rebuke you or to punish you or to... He's as soon as we turn back to him, he runs to us. God has legs. He runs to you. He doesn't care how undignified it is. I can remember, I spoke about this on Sunday, and I used to hang out with a bunch of guys, and then I can remember one by one, these guys would disappear. We'd be hanging out one night. Hey, where's Harry, man? He hasn't been around. Oh, no, Harry met a girl. That would always be Harry's going out with Sue, so he's not going to be here. He's not going to hang out with us anymore. And it was always like, what's wrong with him? Well, and that's kind of, but, we were buddies. We used to hang out together. But no, when you fall in love, things change. Priorities change. You don't care about those old things anymore. And that's what happened. That's what happens here with God. When he sees us turn back to him, he doesn't care about the stuff in the past. He runs to us. The next thing is that God has arms, and it says there that he threw his arms around him. He embraced him. So this God runs to you. This God embraces you. He throws his arms around you. This is a powerful image. I shared something. We have friends, Danielle Strickland, who is she's a great Bible teacher. We know her well, and she had some trouble in younger life. She was having trouble with the police and with drugs and alcohol. And there was this one time she got picked up by the police, and a Salvation Army officer went to greet her. And Danielle, by that point, her heart was very hard, and she was not open to talking to anyone. So as the story was shared with me, Danielle was taken to this room and left in this room with this Salvation Army officer. But Danielle was she crossed her arms and she wasn't going to say anything. And as I understand, the Salvation Army pastor tried to talk to her a bit, but it was obvious Danielle was not going to listen, and she wasn't going to say anything. So this officer just went up and wrapped her arms around Danielle, just wrapped her arms around, gave her a hug, and eventually left. And Danielle was in this room by herself, and again, as she tells the story, she suddenly felt the arms around her. She thought this Salvation Army pastor had come back in again. And she turned around, there's no one there. And yet she felt these arms around her. And she believes that was the arms of God. An embrace from the arms of God. I believe her. See, that fits the image that I have of God. That fits what God looks like. God wraps his arms around us. He embraces us. He hangs on to us with a love that will never let go. And I just love this image of God coming to his son with open arms. This is powerful. Let me move on. Number 6. It says that he kisses his son. So there's this embrace, and then he kisses him. And again, this is to kiss is a sign of affection. Sometimes in Europe they have that, right? It's part of their tradition, sort of, to kiss on the cheek and stuff like that. We don't do that so much, but in actual fact, in the ancient world, this was a very clear sign that he's not taking his son back reluctantly. He is so excited. He loves his son. He delights. He delights in his son. And there are so many scripture verses that talk about this. God delights in you. Zephaniah 3:17, Psalm 18, verse 19, Psalm 142, verse 11. There are so many different... Do you understand this? God delights in you, even when you've let him down, even when you've turned away, even when you've deliberately rebuked him. He is absolutely head over heels about you. And he demonstrates it with a kiss. God demonstrates his love with his lips. His lips don't belittle you or criticize you. These are lips that kiss you, that embrace, arms that embrace you, legs that run to you, lips that kiss you. I hope you're starting to get an image now in your mind of what God looks like. This verse 20, all kinds of different layers here to it, but I got to move on. There's some other things too that I want to point out in verse 22. So verse 22 is another verse that has tons of symbolism behind it. So I just want to go there very quickly. So this is such a dramatic reunion here that the son starts giving this little speech that he's prepared. He says, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. He's about to ask for a job, but his father won't let him ask for a job. His father stops him. He says, quick, bring the best robe. Now, this is a really interesting thing to consider, that the son is coming back to the father, but he's coming back with a plan. Have you ever brought your plans to God and you say, here, God, this is how we're going to do it. I've got it all figured out now. And that's exactly what was happening here. But the son had made a drastic mistake. It was a real misunderstanding. The son just couldn't dream that the father would bring him back as a son. He was really just hoping to be a servant, a worker. That's all he wanted. The son, he assumed that his future had been determined by his past. Now, this is really important for you to understand. Many of us, we think our future has been determined by our past, but it's not. And that's why the father would not enter into a debate with him. As we come back to the father, he's not willing to take us back as a servant. He's not willing to take us back on probation. If we're coming back as part of the family. And he's going to show it. This son, his future is not determined by his past. His future is determined by the family he belongs to. His future is determined by his father. For those of you that are dealing with guilt and shame right now, I want this to be so encouraging to you. You might have made mistakes. You might be in a tough place right now, but your future does not need to be determined by your past. I know this is wild, right? You can't make up a God like this. You can't make this up. This is something that goes beyond our human reason, that we have a God that loves us this much. But I want to encourage you to keep your minds open. So I'm going to continue to prove it as we look into verse 22. It says, in verse 22, but the father said to his servants, quick. In other words, he's not going to debate. Bring the best robe and put it on him. Now, I want to tell you, the robe represents something. The robe is a symbol that says you belong. Again, he's not coming back as a servant. When you come back to God, you come back because you belong. That's where you belong. It's interesting too, and I just read this one place. I don't know how accurate this is, but it's a wonderful image as well. There's no mention here of the son getting a bath. He's serving the pigs, which is the lowest of the lows. For Jews to be around pigs, that was disgraceful. Yet there's no mention here that he got a bath before he went home. It says he went straight back to his father. And his father doesn't say, well, clean him up first and then bring him back here. His father said, put the robe on. I love this. Don't you love this? God doesn't tell you to clean up your life to come back to him. God says, you come back to me and you're going to belong here. We'll deal with the other stuff later. But you belong. When we turn back to him, he accepts us as belonging. The robe is a powerful image. I got to keep going. I know this is getting long. Okay, I got to keep going because not only that, verse 22, bring the best robe and put it on. Put a ring on his finger. So a ring was a sign of commitment. This is not a fair weather friend we're picking up here. This isn't someone that's going to be around just when things are good. This is a father saying, yeah, you're my son and I'm 100% committed to you. You are part of me. This is, in weddings, we symbolize a union with a couple with rings because there's no end to a ring. It goes around and around. That's why it's supposed to represent commitment, that it doesn't end. There's no best before date on this. And so this sign that not only do you belong here, but I'm committed to you just as anybody in my family. And then the last one is put sandals on his feet. Yeah, he had nothing on his feet. Now, servants wear bare feet. But if you're in the family, you wore sandals. You had something on your feet. And so it was important to the father to make sure his son knew that. You're not coming back as a servant. Don't be so foolish. What a ridiculous idea. To us, it makes sense. To our human side, it makes sense. But you understand this God, again, you can't make up a God like this. You can't make this up, that he loves you this much, and he recognizes you as part of the family. Boy, I'm hoping this is an encouragement to you. Even as I go through it again, I feel like I want to preach it again this Sunday. But so let me just go through the first 9 things I've spoken about. First of all, this God gives us freedom. It's a God that looks longingly for our return. It's a God that his heart is filled with compassion. This is a God who runs. He has legs. He runs to us. This is a God that has arms. He embraces us. This is a God whose lips kiss us because he's so delighted in you. And his commitment is demonstrated in the fact that he puts a robe on you. You belong with him. He goes on to say that he'll put a ring on he's committed to you, and sandals on your feet because you're part of the family. Not the last thing. The 10th thing I want to say is that God throws a party for us. He celebrates. He celebrates when we come back to him. I know, this just sounds amazing, doesn't it? But he celebrates. And so we see that he throws a party there in, I think it's in verse 22. That's 23. Bring a fattened calf, let's have a feast and celebrate. God is celebrating when we come back to him. So I do want to just spend another minute on this, the other son who, if I had more time, sometimes I do a sermon on each one of the characters in this story, the father and each son. We spent most of our time focused on who God is, what he looks like, but we've also looked a little bit at the first son, the second son who did everything right, but then when he finds out there's a party for his brother, he won't go in. Can you imagine this? I think this is a symbol of many churches, many people in church. They do everything right, but they never join the party. They don't like what God's doing. They're upset. They're angry about it, which is what the son is expressing here. And so it's in the father's connection with his second son that we see number 11. Number 11, where it says in verse 28, the older brother came out angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. And this is really something interesting. You see, God leaves the party. God leaves the party and he seeks out the other son. He seeks him out to draw him in. This is the last thing I want to say to you in our picture of God. This isn't a God that just goes on having a party. When he sees you drifting away, he leaves and he seeks you out to draw you in. Yeah, I could talk more on that. I just want to leave this now. I want to leave this passage of scripture with you. I want to leave these points. I'm going to read them one more time just so we can close off with this image of God. And I just want to close. I'll close with a question, but let me just go through this again. Jesus tells us his parable in which we are given 11 different pictures of what God looks like. Boy, if anybody can draw a picture like this, that would be wonderful. This is a God that offers us freedom, even when it hurts him. This is a God who looks longingly for us to return. This is a God whose heart is absolutely filled with compassion. There's no room for any resentment or anger or bitterness. It's filled with compassion. This is a God who has legs. He runs to us when we turn back to him. This is a God who embraces us with a love that will never let you go. This is a God whose lips kiss you because he is so delighted with you. In verse 22, it tells us that he puts on a robe symbolizing that we belong. He puts on a ring on our finger, symbolizing his commitment to us. He puts sandals on our feet to confirm that we're part of the family. This is a God who throws a party for us when we return to him. And this is a God that when we're not part of the party, he comes and seeks us out to draw us in. So I guess my closing question for today, thank you. I hope this teaching is useful to you. But the question really is, what son are you? Where do you fit in this parable? God bless you.